Now, you also have to look at the various budgets of the states. Now, if you look at some of these states that are complaining that they have no money, their security budgets alone, as far as I'm concerned, that is what the Americans will call POC, or slush funds. Security budgets alone in most of these states, as poor as they will say they are, ranges between 200 to 500 million every month for security. So you look at those budgets.
Is that still the case? I mean, considering the current budgets that we're seeing state governments present?
Just go check it out. You go and check it out, you see that they still have security votes. They still have, they still have, if you look at the budget, you see a lot of areas that you think that should be taken out.
We're hearing states presenting budgets as low as 2.8 billion for an entire year.
How many states?
Budgets.
How many states
and
are doing that?
Earmark 300, 400
how many
million
states
for security?
are doing that? I'm surprised that you're saying 2.8 billion. First of all, just go and check it out. The lowest I've heard so far is about 90 billion. So if somebody is taking 200 million naira every month for security vote, it comes to 2.4 billion a year. So how many workers do you have? First thing is that I support the idea of doing a workers audit to make sure that you are paying the number of workers you actually have. So, and they tell you that, okay, they have a lot of ghost workers. I say, first of all, which ghost that put those names there? You know, because most times what we do is that we look for somebody to blame. So it is the responsibility for the management, which is the government and the governors, to look for it. You work for channels. It's the responsibility of channels management to source for income, to pay your salaries. Yours is to come here and do what is in your letter of employment.
What is interesting is that, you know, yes, you just cited the example of the private sector. Yeah. The bosses can decide if you're not useful, you're not doing as well as you ought to, or you're not adding as much value as you ought to add to a company, you can be fired. But that rarely happens in the public sector.
You say rarely happens. It cannot happen. It can't be fired arbitrarily.
No, it does happen. But again, even if your boss in the private sector, I worked in the private sector. So there are rules of engagement. There is what they call collective bargaining agreement. Your boss is not going to wake up suddenly and say, Mokbe, you are fired. No. You must have committed a crime. You must have abdicated your responsibility, the relation of duty. So you have to factor all of that before you go ahead and fire.
That's what they call downsizing.
Even the best, yes, you can downsize.
Yes.
Even the worst
that
place,
doesn't happen in the public sector.
Yeah, let me tell you now. For me, when I left school and I had the opportunity to work in the public sector, I said I would never work in the public sector. I prefer to work in the private sector, where things are defined. It is clear. It is black or white. But in the public sector, somebody don't like your face, no matter how good you are fired. And something is brought up against you, that can happen in the private sector. So even if you are talking about the fact that, okay, you have to pay me XYZ, now you even have a government, a governor, a president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And then a governor will sign an agreement with workers. And you can't meet that terms. In the private sector, no matter how long it takes you, in the oil and gas, no matter how long it takes you to negotiate, but the day the document is signed, it's a done deal. You can go to sleep. But even in the public sector, the day you sign your document is even the beginning of your problem. So how will you now say that you sign an agreement with the federal government, with the state government, and at the end of the day, till now, as I'm talking to you now, 5 years it has expired, a new one is about to commence, there are still many states that cannot pay 18,000.
Mr. Esele, you said here that even in the course of the negotiations, no government actually proposed 18,000. They were all proposing above that. But now they're not able to pay. And this committee is going to start its own conversations. What do you think would happen? Would they be able to pay? Because definitely it will be above the 18,000 naira. Would they be able to pay if they're not able to pay the 18,000 naira that they agreed to?
They should be able to pay. They had to find the money. Now, let me give you an example. You are talking about, I heard they were commending the president of, we are out of recession. Now, 18,000 naira at the time we negotiated, it was $120. 18,000 right now is $59. So 18,000 naira, $120 in 2011 is now $59. So what you've done, you've also reduced the purchasing power of your workers. So at the end of the day, how do you now expect to grow the economy? Because the economy actually is not the man who has 100 billion in his account that actually grows the economy significantly. It's the man who makes maybe 50,000 naira, 100,000 naira, but you know he's going to go to the market to make purchases, he's going to buy tomato, and the woman who sells tomato knows she has to go to the farm to get the tomato, so everybody benefits from it. So if the man, his purchasing power is so low, how do you expect him to survive? How do you even expect to fight corruption? Because the first law, let us not kid ourselves, let's tell ourselves the truth. The first law of life is survival. The person needs to survive. And by any means or means possible, he wants to survive. So if at the end of the day, you are not paying him what can even take him home, he will look for any means for him to survive where he works. Okay, in the private sector, what I'm telling you about, I know what my pension is. This minor gate we are talking about, all the money is coming from the public sector. It's not from the private sector. From my phone, I can see my pension. I know what I will get.
So what would you be? I know you've already said that you don't want to preempt, you don't want to shoot Labour's argument. But realistically speaking, 56,000 naira, do you think that Labour has set its target way too far?
It's negotiation. I can tell you I want 1 million. Even if you work in channels now, you want to negotiate with the management, you can tell the management you want 1 million a month. The management is going to say, okay, fine, let's talk about it. And the management comes about...
But you do know that there are some arguments. I mean, there are some negotiations that immediately put... for instance, if you go to the market, you know, maybe you have an idea of how much this glass should cost. And the market woman says, well, it costs 1 million naira, hoping that you would negotiate. Yeah, sometimes that, you know, the cost alone just puts you off and you're not in any mood to negotiate. Yeah, doesn't that happen?
It may happen, but it's not all the time. But what you have is a tripartite. And this is how it is done. But the most important thing we need to ask ourselves, or we also look at what Labour is doing, is that we're trying to also involve how do you even go ahead and do a negotiation without the whole world knowing. Because if you look at those in the private sector, they can do their negotiation and get so much money at the end of the day, but nobody knows. But the minute this one also comes out, you have everybody waiting for that money coming to the worker. So that is where government has an issue. If you look at the state, in the Nordic countries, for example, you pay as high as 50% of your wage as tax. If you ask me to pay 50% of my wage and you say, okay, we are going to have a wage freeze. And at the end of the day, I'm having a wage freeze and you say you are going to give my kids sound, free education. I'm going to take care of your health care. You are going to have transport subsidy. So who is going to come and ask you to give me 1 million naira a month? No. That is what they do in Nordic countries.
So if, let's just say the government says we'll leave it at 18,000 naira for minimum wage, but we'll take care of free education, health care, transportation. Would that be good enough for Labour?
That would have been it if you have the structure in place. Here we don't have a structure. That's even the painful aspect. If you are talking about transportation, how easy it is for you to get cheap transport. You and I know you travel out of this country, you can buy a ticket that will take you for a whole month. But you can't do that here. And then you look at your out of that $59 I'm telling you about.
Which is just about $100 and something, about $120, $130.
Right now for 18,000 naira?
Just about.
No, it's not.
No, that is for 50-something thousand that they're proposing.
Exactly.
It's just about $120, $130.
Exactly. Now that you will take care of yourself, to treat yourself for malaria alone, you're not going to spend anything less than 4,000.
I'm curious, why is it that Labour hasn't also looked at the side of, you know, hourly wage, the hourly wage? In many countries, we know that people's labor minimum wage is set on an hourly basis so that Labour can, but we'll let you answer to that question when we return from this break. Well, Mr. Peter Esele is still with us in the studio. It's our closing moments with him. And just before we went on that break, I was asking you, why hasn't Labour considered the hourly minimum wage for workers?
I think Labour is actually considering it. I think it became part of our conversation. I left TUC in 2000. My tenure as TUC president ended in 2013. And I think we were already now also discussing, it was something we were discussing between NECA and the TUC. We're looking at how sustainable and how workable it is.
What did you find? So some people say that they feel the workers will be cheated at the end of the day.
Some people feel that way. Depends upon, at the end of the day, what you negotiated. Because if I now tell you that, okay, fine, per hour comes to like 1,000 naira, or power. If you look at it, because what we're trying, our benchmark was, okay, let's look, minimum, to rise above poverty level, when they say you are within the poverty level is when you are anything below $3 a day. So even if you look at our own earning at the moment, $1 goes for $3.65. So if you look at that, $3.65, you're looking at about 1,000, and somebody comes up and say, okay, fine, for every hour I want to take 500 naira, I want to take 1,000 naira. So it depends on what finding that balance. It has to come from what you are going to negotiate between the tripartite. But it's something that Labour will also be considering, or they should consider going forward, because Labour also need to involve with the society.
And because some people also argue that that might also have an effect on productivity and also increase workers' ability to be able to earn.
Yes, it's both ways. I think it's both ways. It has its own. There's basically nothing you are doing that does not have its pros and cons. So it's ability for us to find that balance. I think it's doable, but then it's not something that you think can be done in the next 2, 3, 4 years.
If you were to set a target for this committee, how many weeks or months would you give them? I
think by March they should be done. Because if you look at it, I'm also looking at the basis for, even in the interest of the government, it's something that they should do and get away, because from 2018, middle of 2018, it becomes all politics all through. And then it will not be in their interest to have workers against them. You know, workers have to now come up and say, fine, you're not paying us minimum wage. We've been earning $59.
So you're not expecting that this conversation will be factored into the 2018 budget?
I think they can always take, what they call it again. You can always go back, supplementary budget. You can always go back to the National Assembly. As far as the National Assembly is also part of the conversation. And don't forget that the APC had both majority on both chambers. So we expect that whatever they agree will be easy. It will be easy for it to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Peter Esele, former president of the Trade Union Congress. Thank you for speaking with us.
You're welcome.
And that's it for Sunrise Daily from the Abuja studio. I'm Neo Taigwe.
Well, don't get jealous, Kimba. We believe you will come here very soon. Thank you for watching today. I'm Maokbe Ogun.
I really do hope so, Maokbe. Thank you so much indeed. And thank you for watching That Sunrise Daily for today. Goodbye.